Welcome to the dark side. It is Tuesday. This is now our third episode, Justin. I mean, we're starting to hit a groove now. I mean, this is starting to feel like this is the thing we do Tuesday evenings, and I like how it's building into a routine. And the last episode, God, that was so much fun. I don't know how you felt when you walked away, but I was just glowing with the discussion that we had.
Yeah, I think it'll be good to at some point circle around back to that. After the episode, I left with like, man, I should have asked this question, or I should have got his thoughts on this, and of course, it it got me thinking about additional questions. So I think it would be cool to do another round, and I think that maybe even going back and looking at some of the comments that people have left. I'm sure there's questions from there. So yeah, it was a good time. It was a good podcast. I really enjoyed highlighting some of those big questions or common
Yeah.
questions at least, and it'd be fun to do it again.
It would be, and I've realized going back through Quora again, these things don't stop. I mean, people are asking stuff about mental health every single day, and I'm loving some of the stuff they're asking. And a lot of these things, Justin, I never really got really deep into Reddit or Quora before, but a lot of it is about attraction to clients. I mean, this is a big freaking deal.
Yeah.
And I mean, bless people's hearts for asking this stuff, but it is very prevalent, at least in the social media world. And I would love to, yeah, bounce around those dangerous topics. This attraction thing that keeps coming up.
Yeah, I think there's so many ways we can go with that, and just uh, so many things that need to be
Right.
clarified um, with all of that. Not that not that the feedback and the answers we give, right, are gospel or 100% matter of fact, right? But I think that as we've
Right.
sort of discussed in previous um, podcasts, I say previous podcasts like we've been doing this forever. If we get
I
along so
know. I
well,
know.
it
It's
feels
only
like
been
we've done it
three.
forever. But I think that we give. I mean, I try to, and I think you do yourself. I try to come with, to the side here. I've got my iPad set up. I really like to cite sources or read
Mhm.
directly from sources, and so I think that we when say clarify, I mean what is the literature saying? What is some of the most up to date stuff saying? And I think that we do a good job of applying that to some of these hot topics.
Yes. Absolutely. And our own personal experience, which,
Yes.
for better or worse, but without saying that we're right about it. And I just love that. That again, check us out, challenge us, do not agree with us. You don't have to, but we are going to cite our sources. We're going to use our experience, and we're going to make the best case we can for why we think something is the right way to look at something or the right answer. Um, the one that really I kept thinking about is the recording your therapist, though. I got off last night or last week after we had done the episode. I thought I could have been recorded for 3 years, the amount of time I've done telehealth. Actually, it's 4 years. I would never know any of this.
Right.
I it just started to freak me out, Justin, because we don't know what people are doing. They don't have to get our permission. I mean, legally they should, but we
Yeah. Well, and what I've learned in my short time as a therapist, I mean, there's clients I've seen for a little over 2 years, and you get to know them on a different level. Um, and at some point, if you're not careful, those sessions sort of feel like, or those sessions with those clients tend to feel maybe a little less like therapy and more of like sort of shooting the shit type deal. Um,
right,
Excuse my
right.
language, but it sort of feels like that kind of thing. And then maybe a bill went out that they didn't agree with, or something was set, or whatever, and they can turn on you on a dime, right? Flip of
Yes.
a coin, and I think that the recording thing then comes into play, like all of a sudden, because people can be vindictive, right? People can be vindictive and use that information, and so I worry about that too. And also, you know what? Um, I'm not really any different in my therapeutic hat than I am in real life. So there's not
Yep.
much that I say in a therapy session that I don't say in public.
Yep. Wow. And I'm the same way. It's like what you see is what you get. And so if you do want to prosecute me, so I know we have a big topic to get to tonight. Should I tell the audience now or should I wait?
Well, I mean, if you want to, we can go now. I think it's one of those topics that we were sort of alluding to just a couple seconds ago, which is it's sort of out there everywhere, and we need to clarify some things and have a conversation about this topic that's probably going to rustle some feathers. People are going to be pissed. People are going to be offended,
Yeah.
and that's not the goal. But this is one of those topics that I think that we were sort of talking about a little bit ago. That yeah, we need to set the record straight a little bit on.
The reason I set it up like this is I had one more comment about the recording thing, and then again, I want to get to the big topic, but this came up in our group supervision this week where I challenged people about what would you do if you got accused of something, right? What would your step be? And one of my supervisees actually said, well, I may start watching myself and how I interact with people. And I said, well, hold on here. Because you get accused doesn't mean you did it. You
Right.
could have somebody falsely, just as you alluded to, making something up.
Yep.
And so I think it's interesting, again, that there's kind of these things happen, but they have to be intentional on the therapist's part. No, they do not. There are people, you're right, who are vindictive and who will take it to the extreme. So I
Yep.
just want to follow up on that because I think we forget that.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Um, so that said, here it goes. Neurodivergence. We're going to talk about it.
Eric, what does that even mean to you? Let's start there. Let me just jump in. Let me just say for our viewers, Eric and I had a little bit of a conversation before we got on podcast, and it's been a rough Tuesday. I don't know if some like the magnetic pole, or I don't know what you call it, or like if the Matrix is sort of doing a thing today that, that's maybe another topic for a podcast. But so the energy will come out, I promise. And so, but before we even get there, I just want to say or ask you, like, what does neurodivergent mean to you?
Well, this is kind of funny because I don't know that I'd even heard the term until relatively recently in my career. It's one of those that probably floated around, but the thing that I most associate it with is Asperger's, now blanketed by autism.
High
That's the one
functioning
that came to
autism.
mind. Okay. Now, I've since learned that it really can accompany a wide range of mental health disorders like ADHD, or people, again, who just do not think, as we talked about, neurotypically. But when I think about it, autism is the word that I link to neurodiversity.
Yeah. People are using all kinds of words though. I mean, if you have ADHD, there are people out there considering themselves neurodivergent. If you just sort of struggle in any way, people are like, "Ooh, I'm neurodivergent." And for some reason, and one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation tonight is because this is sort of the new buzzword, neurodivergent. I mean, it's been around for a little while. I'll cite some sources here in a little bit, but the word or the phrase neurodivergent has been around for a little while. But over the last maybe like year or 6 months, especially on like like TikTok and other sort of social media platforms, like people want to be neurodivergent. People want to be part of this community, and I'm trying to wrap my head around it as like why? What's and what are your thoughts on that? Like why do people want that phrase?
So, have we ever talked about the book, The Coddling of the American Mind?
I don't think so.
Written by Jonathan Haidt and, oh gosh, I forgot the other guy's name. It'll come to me. Um, Everything seemed to change. I think they cite about 2014. There was just this wave. Hopefully, you can find it. This wave of entitlement that seemed to spark, and they first noticed it on college campuses. But it's this idea that we've got to protect our kids. That we
Sure.
went from this let kids explore to we've got to protect them at all costs. And the research bears out that hasn't been a good thing because kids feel less and less self-efficacy to be able to do things. Now, I'm gonna make a leap here. Feel free to jump on this one. I look at neurodivergence as kind of in the same capacity here. that it's not okay to just be. I'll say that again. It's not okay to just be. You have to have a title, an attribute, a label, because without it, you're not important or special. So to your question, why do we embrace this stuff? Because if I'm just Eric by himself, I'm not very special or interesting. But if I have a title, maybe I have a purpose, maybe I have a reason, and that's what I've arrived at. So feel free to tear into that.
I mean, I think you're onto something there. I think it's um, uh, even a sort of a belonging, right? Like I think this world, the way it is, like people just feel really disconnected from everything, and maybe this is a whole nother thing, but we really need the likes and the hearts and the
Yeah.
the pay attention to my status updates. And how do I do that? Well, I have to say something like this, right? And so I think part of it is that, part of it is wanting to feel connected and like they belong to a certain community. And so
Right.
I think that uh, we sort of latch onto these things. By the way, the book that you're talking about by Jonathan Haidt, right? Um,
Yes.
it has, oops, it has a couple. I'm not going to be able to say his last name, but Greg Lukianoff.
That sounds right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's I was just sort of
Not
looking
this
at,
book, people. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, the coddling of the American mind, how good intentions and bad ideas are setting up a generation for failure. So a timely investigation into the new safety culture on campus and the danger it poses to free speech, mental health, education, and ultimately democracy. I want to be clear about
Yeah.
something.
Mhm.
Listening to this first part of this podcast, people might go, "Ooh, these are some super conservative people," and I just want to be very clear. I'm I'm quite the opposite. Not that there's anything wrong with super conservative people, but I want to make that very clear that I tend to have pretty liberal opinions and perspectives about the world. Um, but I'm also not gonna like I'm not also just gonna say, oh, I'm a liberal, or these are sort of my this is sort of my general worldview, and so I have to view everything out of that lens, right? And I think this is one of those things. And I think that's why the
Right.
phrase of this book or the title of this book is so catching to me, the coddling of the American mind. We do that a
Yeah.
lot. And
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
for the people that really truly are neurodivergent, it makes that word, eventually that word is not going to neurodivergent is not going to mean something, just like trauma doesn't really mean anything anymore. People were like, oh, trauma,
Mhm.
yeah, trauma, and now everybody's trauma informed and trauma educated and trauma this, trauma that, and now it's like, oh, you got trauma, yeah, me too, no big deal, right? And so I think that does a
Right.
disservice to those people.
I think you're right. And funny you bring that up because one of the parts of the book talks about the fact that trauma used to be, and again, let's get controversial even more tonight. Trauma used to be reserved for the worst things that could happen to you, going to war,
Yep.
being raped or molested, watching somebody die in front of you. And they
Yep.
make the point in the book that I can't think of a better way to say it, but the bar for trauma is so low now that it started to lose its meaning exactly as you're talking about, because anybody can claim to have it. In fact, one of the episodes I did prior to us joining up, somebody called me out and said, "You don't get to determine somebody's trauma." I'm thinking, well, then that means anybody can say exactly what they are or have experienced without investigation. I don't think that's okay. But I see that that's what's becoming of the culture. Or to paraphrase Jordan Peterson, yeah, he's controversial, Canadian psychologist. Here I go. You have to do what clients want you to do these days. I'll say that again. You have to do what clients want you to do, or you get in trouble.
Yeah,
And
you
I,
get
and I, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. You get 10 reviews all of a sudden out of nowhere on
yeah,
Google reviews, all these one stars by people that don't even know you, but because you offended somebody or said something to somebody in their community that they don't like, boom, now you get 10 reviews. Here's the thing, that is something
yeah,
that happened to a close friend and mentor of mine. Uh, this person reached out saying, "Hey, I think I have autism. I think I'm ASD. I'm on the spectrum, and I want you to do an ASD eval for me." And the psychologist said in a nice email, I'm paraphrasing and really paraphrasing, but in a very professional email, essentially said, "I don't think I'm the clinician for you then. If you're looking for that specific of a diagnosis and that specific of an eval, I can't help you
Right.
out because I do more holistic neuropsychological evals that looks at everything from language processing disorders to personality factors to cognitive struggles, right? That could be causing sort of some of these things that you might be seeing. And also,
Right.
if you've already self-diagnosed, that's going to skew the data. You're already going to answer everything in a certain way. You're going to approach every single task from a certain way because your lens is already skewed because you've sort of self-diagnosed. And I think that's a huge problem that people are self-diagnosing. Does ASD exist? Sure. Does ADHD exist? Sure. Um, but we're self-diagnosing way too much.
Can I tell you what this is like to me? Have you ever done the Myers-Briggs four-letter number thing that they do?
I just had, I just had to do one because I'm gonna go do some work in a jail, and I'm like an ENFP or some bull crap like that.
Um, I think I'm ENFJ, but don't quote me. But here's the thing. When you have people take this thing and then they read the description, I've seen a lot of people who look and say, "Well, it's me. They've just nailed it." And then they do a different, readout. God, that's me too. Well, it turns out it's so freaking general. You could read any of them and you could find yourself in there because I'll tell you, it changes on the day, right? Some
Right.
days I'm introverted, you wouldn't know it, but there's some days I do want to hide away. Other days I'm more intuitive than I am perhaps thinking things through. But people will look at this stuff and wow, I am an INFJ. I'm so glad I know that now. No, no, you're not. You took an 80 question quiz that means nothing. But to your point, yeah, now I am that.
Well, it's kind of like it's kind of like horoscopes, right? Like I'm an Aries. I mean, I'm a self-identified Aries. I know that, but you can go on
Yes.
and look like, oh, what does Aries say about you? In general, sure. And people are like, see, so. And here's the thing: not everything you read. I don't know who needs to hear this. Probably many of my viewers,
Just
our
say
viewers.
it. Say it. Get it
But
out there.
just because you read something on the internet doesn't make it so.
Oh.
There are a lot of things on the internet that are not accurate. And also, let me just throw this out there. This is not a pat on the back, but as a second year ish uh, PhD student, I'm going to tell you that doing your research does not mean Googling stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There is a particular skill set you have to really be able to absorb, not only absorb, but first identify scholarly
Right.
written articles and then also interpret and absorb the information that is being given. And a quick Google search, it, in my opinion, is not good research.
So, okay, you have the advantage of having a second screen. Apparently, I'm pretty primitive here, but I want you to do me a favor and look up a
Sure.
quote by Sam Harris. If you just type in Sam Harris, domain of expertise, the quote will come up. And if you would read that, I would mean so much to me. Then I won't have to fumble on my phone.
The quote of
So Sam
expertise.
Harris and the quote, just type in domain of expertise.
Oh, domain of
Domain of
expertise.
expertise.
So let's see.
See, in my mind, this is always so simple, but it never is.
Well, Cora, the first Cora question that pops up on the Google searches is Sam Harris a fraud for claiming to be an expert in the field of neuroscience, given the fact that he has published only 3 academic papers?
Wow. Okay. You're trying to kill Sam Harris before he even.
Let's see. I mean, I'm not finding a lot of good things about him so far.
You know what? All right. Let's
Sa-
see if I can find it. I suppose with our podcast here, all bets are off. We can do things that are non-traditional, right?
Sure. Sam Harris is an American philosopher, neuroscientist, author, and podcast
Yes.
host. His work touches on a range of
Yes.
topics, including rationality, religion, ethics, free will, neuroscience, meditation, psychedelics, philosophy of mind, politics, terrorism, and AI. Ooh, there's a plug for next week. AI.
I was.
Stay tuned.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
He
Uh,
comes. He came to prominence for his criticism of religion and Islam in particular, and is known as one of the four horsemen of New Atheism, along with Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, and Daniel Dennett. So, whatever quote you're looking for, Eric, I hope it's pretty damn good because what I'm reading so far, I'm not sure. I think that core question, I would respond to that and go, he sounds like a quack.
wow.
I'm just saying,
Okay.
based
Well,
off
I'm going
of
to prove to you he's not a quack because you are going to like this quote. Actually, why am I even saying you're going to like it? You might not.
I might
Um,
not.
you know what? It's tougher to find than I thought. Wow.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what I'm saying. I mean, I think he's done so much controversial things that that's everything that's coming up first.
but I totally found the quote like last week. So just this is just me not finding it. Um, all right. Well, you know what? Um, if I can't find it,
How
and you
about
know
this
what? I
one?
can't find it. Yes,
I'll just fill in the time as you're looking for it. How about
please
he
do.
is quoted as saying nothing irrational about seeking the states of mind that lie at the core of many religions. Compassion, awe, devotion, and feelings of oneness are surely among the most valuable experiences a person can have. He goes on to say, everything of value that people get from religion can be had more honestly, without presuming anything on insufficient evidence. The rest is self deception set to music. So, this is a guy who's saying religion is not honest. He's
Well,
sort of.
okay. Here's the thing. Okay, let me defend this because I wasn't going to argue about religion or anything else. I just thought it was a good freaking quote on the domain of expertise, and I can't find the damn thing. So, because I'm trying to prove your point here, that everybody has become an expert in everything, right? And just like you're saying, a Google search ain't going to do it. When we talk about AI next week, and I really jump on this person that's using AI, I feel quite destructively. I'm thinking, how many peer-reviewed articles has she read on human connection? Because if she had read any, she'd probably know that trying to connect virtually is not a great way to connect with people. It is actually pretty anti-productive. But there's a lot of money to be made, so maybe she doesn't care. But that's next week.
Yeah, I mean, there's a YouTube video. Sorry, I mean, I don't know who this Sam Harris is. So if he really is a quack, I'm not trying to plug his stuff. But there is a YouTube video called Sam Harris on Trusting Experts and Scientists. So you can go find that on YouTube. So I don't know if that's what you're talking about. It's a 21-minute video. But
Yeah.
if you could paraphrase, like
Well,
what is he saying?
so the main ideas he's saying are that not everybody's opinion should count. Okay, if you have a domain of experts, like let's say for example, you and I are experts in trauma. I know you had a problem with the word when I used it, but let's just say for the sake of argument we are. Well, then that probably means we have some insight into this or some information not everybody else has. Okay,
Right.
so all things being equal, what we're going to say may have more bearing than somebody that just posts on TikTok. You know what? Here's what trauma is. Here's what it's not. I think we have credibility. Now, somebody out there is going to disagree, but I will fight that argument to the death because if we don't have any experts anymore, then who the hell do we believe?
Right.
I'll say it again. If we don't have any experts anymore, who do we believe?
But I don't think people want experts all the time, Eric. I think people want to just be told what they think to be true.
Well,
And
okay.
I think that's sort of what I'm getting at with my neurodivergence comment. Let me just read this to you. This comes
Please.
from the Cleveland Clinic, and I find a lot of scholarly articles from the Cleveland Clinic, so I can appreciate them. Um,
I
but
think my research partners mentioned them. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, what does it mean when a person is neurodivergent? The term neurodivergent describes people whose brain differences affect how their brain works. That means they have different strengths and challenges from people whose brains that don't have those differences. That that just by itself, I'm not understanding. Okay, let's dig deeper. The possible differences include medical disorders, learning disabilities, and wait for it, other conditions. Right?
Uh-huh.
That's kind of like when you go to a job and they're like, "Here's your 10 job duties." And then the 11th one is other duties as assigned. They put that in there so they can make up whatever they want, right? Which sort of feels like that's what this is. Um, learning disorders, medical disorders, and other conditions, right? And so I think people sort of start throwing things under there. Um, the possible strengths include
Yeah.
better memory, being able to mentally picture 3D objects, the ability to solve complex mathematical calculations in their head, and many more. I want our viewers to hear this. Neurodivergent isn't a medical term. Okay? It's not a medical term.
That's
It's a
correct. Right.
way to describe people using words other than normal and abnormal. Um, that's important because there's no single definition of normal for how human brain works. The world,
Right. Right.
the word for people who aren't neurodivergent is neurotypical. That means their strengths and challenges aren't affected by any kind of difference that changes how their brains work. Answer me this. What
Yeah.
person what person isn't affected? Like whose brain isn't affected by things?
Well, let me just throw this at you. Does this seem like what typical people have hanging around their office? I don't know. Maybe everybody has Batman, but I bet
My
nobody else has Batman and Bob Ross.
probably not.
So I don't know. What does that make me?
That,
Give me a label right now.
that makes you neurodivergent for sure. Your brain so it certainly doesn't function like most neurotypical people.
No. I gravitate to shows like Impractical Jokers. I I can watch Star Wars religiously. Um, I could read The Far Side every day. I mean, these could be problematic. But here's the thing, too, as you're saying all this. The suggestion behind all of this is that there is a way to be that is correct and right.
Say that again.
There has to be, or we wouldn't need these terms. Okay. And, I quote George Carlin a lot. I'm such a fan. I really think he was like a Mark Twain type person. I think he was very honest. I don't think he cared who we offended. In one of his specials, he said, "We use soft language to conceal the truth." And he has this whole routine he does, Justin, where he says, partly cloudy became partly sunny. We're not handicapped, we're handy capable. And, and he says, "Look, brother," he goes, "you can change the name of the disease, doesn't change the condition." And I always think about that when I look at how people use words to describe things. It doesn't matter, but we're a feel-good society. So I'm not a nerd. In fact, in the presentation I did that you missed, which hopefully you get to see it again, I said I'm not a nerd. I'm a pop culture enthusiast. Doesn't that sound better?
Uh, Probably for most people, but I think it just sounds like you're full of crap.
It does. I'm a freaking nerd.
I, and
There is nothing. Yeah.
you make a good point. I mean you can change wording and reframe things to make it sound better, right? But I think it's something like one of my mentors once told me, which was you can sprinkle sprinkles on crap, but it's still crap. Um, and here's the thing: I want to make sure that our viewers understand. While there might have been some, maybe a little bit of joking or whatever you want to call it, um, like I'm not trying to poke fun at these terms, right? At neurodivergent people, there are people that are truly neurodivergent, people who really struggle with social problems because of whether it's autism or something else. So
Yep.
that really
Yep. Yep. Yep.
exists, and I'm not poking at that. But I think maybe the better question to ask about this is, and we've sort of already covered a little bit, but what is the goal with self-proclaiming
Right.
yourself as neurodivergent? And and if you don't have a good answer to that, then I don't think you should be using that word. I don't think you should be using that phrase, that term
Right.
to self-identify. And if you haven't
Right.
had a thorough psychological eval, neuropsychological eval, I really don't think you should be calling yourself that.
Right.
Self-diagnosing is a problem.
This plays into what we talked about last time, which is we've handed the power to the client and the client's parents. So now that they know these terms, uh, they want these terms, unfortunately. And I tend to agree. I think with most, I'll call them higher end disorders, we should have a psych eval, maybe even a team of people evaluating. Frazier down in the cities, they still do that, I believe. You get a team of people evaluating you. Uh, Whereas you and I just sit in our office and say, okay, this is what you have. I mean, it's not that simple, but certainly more often than not, we don't use a team approach.
Right. Well, and how many times do you see on social media or whatever these agencies saying like, "Oh, we have openings for autism evaluations, or we have openings
Right.
for ADHD assessments." And I'm not saying all agencies are money hungry, but let's be honest, like those evaluations, you know, the the CPT codes that you can throw on there,
I
um,
know they're not
it
cheap.
adds up.
Yeah.
And so these are cash grabs. I mean, do I want a psychologist to join my practice? You're damn right. Um, because from a business perspective, sure, it is a good revenue source. From the clinician perspective of me, um, I want good quality assessments that are going to help people, and I don't want to just bring people in just for the sake of doing assessments. And I think sometimes
Right.
agencies do that. And I've always been a believer in if you're looking for something specific, you're going to find it. Um, if you're looking for
Right.
ADHD, you can find it. If you're looking for autism, you can find it. If you're looking for conduct disorder, oppositional defiance disorder, DMDD, whatever, you can find it.
Right. Right. Right.
Why not zoom the
Right.
lens out and do a more of a holistic assessment um, to see what's really going on?
Well, was that rhetorical, or do you want an answer?
Oh, I want an answer. I want your thoughts.
Okay. Well, a couple of them. Number one, and I'll just look at this from an agency perspective. Therapists are too damn busy to be able to do those types of things, because the emphasis is on billing and paperwork and productivity. You know all this. Um, we are a unique field in that the demands of growth and expertise are matched by virtually no freaking time to get the expertise drilled into us.
Yep.
Uh, and I think what it leads to is, and you can hate me for this, but you have some therapists that could be way more talented that don't get to be, and so they become sort of one dimensional.
Yep.
And if you're a one-dimensional therapist, that's great if you get the right fit. But as you're saying, it's not so helpful if you need to broaden how you see something. Yes, I think trauma people get stuck in a lens. I do. I think once you're looking for it, it's very hard to be objective. Now, let me argue against myself because we said we would do this. In personality disorder work, do I do the same thing? Am I looking for this stuff? I try not to. I really try to be objective. But look, we're human beings. We're influenced by what we know and have experienced. So I again, I think it's very hard to be objective.
Yeah, I agree with you. What are your thoughts on personality disorders, Eric? No, I'm just kidding. That's for later on. We'll do that later.
Oh, of course we will. After you attack Sam Harris, I'm not going to forget that.
Well, I'm still waiting to hear something clever from him. I mean, everything I've sort of just glanced at on Google here shows he's sort of a I don't know, not a great person. Let's just
So,
put it
so
that way.
Justin, can you tell me what confirmation bias means?
Confirmation bias. Oh,
Yeah,
you're gonna come at me with the big words right now.
you know I am. Hey, you're the one that's going for his PhD here. Come on.
Well, I mean, you know, I think confirmation bias, it's just sort of in the name, right? That you you have certain biases that confirm what you're looking for. So you will tend to seek out things like, for example, if I'm adamant that I have ADHD, uh, everything I find is sort of going to be confirmatory of that suspicion of ADHD, right? So I might try I might my and even a Freudian thing, maybe on an unconscious or subconscious level, I'm googling certain things that are confirming my suspicion, and that's a bias. That's confirmation bias. Um, does that answer your
That was a
question?
that was really good. So, but you took it in the wrong direction. Do you think you experienced confirmation bias with Sam Harris?
Ha, I haven't confirmed anything. I think off of my non-scholarly research of
Yeah,
Google
yeah,
articles,
yeah.
um, everything that I was seeing, especially on Quora, says, I don't know that this dude is a real expert. And
Mm.
maybe that's why he does an expert, or maybe that's why he does a podcast about experts not really being experts, right?
Um, maybe, but it was really fun to sort of do that with you because you saw one thing that wasn't very positive, but it seemed like you started stacking a little bit. Well, here's another one. Well, if we had time tonight, I could show you lots of very well reviewed material. So I just want to point that out.
But if I showed you my screen, it's not. I haven't even. I literally typed in what you told me to, and everything that I see on Sam Harris is the same thing. I'm not even. I'm not even googling other search terms, so I don't know. I think you're searching here for some confirmation on your biases of Sam Harris.
Wow, wow. I'm going to proclaim that I'm the victim to this.
Oh boy, you really are an expert in personality disorders, aren't you?
Ah, yeah, I know all the drama switches, and I just
Yeah.
um I'll
This
tell you
feels a
what,
little.
the
This feels.
energy.
This feels a little like gaslighting. I'm not gonna lie to you.
um yeah, um of course it is. Of course it is. But look, if I didn't care about you, I wouldn't do it.
Oh. Okay. All right. I guess I'll keep you around.
All right, thanks, Justin. Yeah, somehow getting back to it. Yeah. Um I have to say this because I think again you and I will agree with this. Um from the time we're very young, and I remember being a kid in kindergarten and first grade, they start differentiating you pretty early on from your mathematical abilities, your athletic abilities, your reading and writing. I don't think that's changed up to the present day.
Nope.
And you and I both know you can really hurt a kid's self esteem early on in life by this differentiation. It happened to me mathematically. Dude, I have no confidence in math. I'm telling you, I think it goes back to being made to feel humiliated when I was like 10 years old. I still remember it. Now, my argument is going to be if we know that not being part of something is not good for people, why do we keep dicing people into these other categories that are exclusive? Because I maybe can't get into the neurodivergent category. Okay, maybe somebody else can't get in. What if you're riding the border, so to speak? I mean, where does it end, Justin? Where does it end? I think that's my big question.
That's a great question. I don't have an answer for that. I think my thoughts are very similar. I think it's a I think it's a dangerous sort of path to be going down. And I think, as I said, maybe last episode or one of the my first episode with you, um, this is why psychology as a field in the 70s or 80s, whenever it was sort of at risk from being sort of completely classified as a pseudoscience, because
Right,
we weren't able to
right.
confirm things the way the medical field was. And I think that I think that this is a slippery slope, right? We start throwing all these terms out there, um, and we really have nothing to prove it, right? I mean, we don't have anything. So I think it's a slippery slope. I think my question
Yes.
maybe would be, what are your thoughts? Like, what do people do with this information? So they sort of hear us sort of going on and on about this tonight, but if I think I can't concentrate, if I think I'm, hyperactive, or my attention is here, there, and everywhere, I can't complete a task from start to finish, or I have problems socially engaging, and I have suspicions that maybe I'm on the spectrum, maybe I have a undiagnosed ADHD. What do I do? If I can't Google, if that's wrong of me to Google and self-diagnose, then what do I do?
And that's a great question. I think obviously sitting down with some degree of professional first, but let's look at how we look at that too, because people specialize in different stuff. But I think even at the most basic level of therapy, just beginning the conversation. Let's just at least begin the conversation before you start Googling terms, before you start pulling in your TikToks, your Reddits. Talk to somebody that, assuming has their head screwed on a little bit tighter than the average person, um, because I think that just is going to be a hell of a lot more effective than going on this. And this actually, okay, quick story. I had a client I had diagnosed with BPD about 10 years ago. I told her what I came up with. Client went and Googled it all night, came in and just freaking lit into me. Okay. Because if you, and this was 10 years ago, that's how bad it was. Talk about the dangers of a diagnosis.
Sure.
Here's something controversial. There are some people that think you shouldn't tell the client their diagnosis because it might be a danger to them.
Yeah, well, I think you can tell the client the diagnosis, but if you're not going to follow that up with good information and psychoeducation on how you came to
Right.
that conclusion, what it means for them, what can they do about
Yep.
it, I think if you leave all that stuff out, yeah, don't tell them. I mean, that's like saying, "Oh, thanks for coming to my office, Eric. By the way, you have brain cancer. See you later."
Yes. 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 But that happens a lot in therapy world, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of, here's your diagnosis, and good luck. Right? Or, you know,
Right.
yeah, it's another frustrating aspect that not every therapist was created equal. And not
No.
everybody that's
No.
a
No.
therapist should be a therapist. Not everybody that's a medical professional should be a medical professional. I mean, you're going to find that in any profession. And so I think for our viewers, I'd encourage you to search out, not just the first available, not just the one that definitely takes your insurance, um, but to do some research on the clinician you're meeting with. Um, and also, as you're meeting with a therapist, like, if you've got this diagnosis and they don't explain it to you, or it just isn't feeling right, you can ask them the questions. What the hell are we
Yeah.
doing? What are we doing here? Like, are you an
Absolutely.
expert in this, or do I need something else?
Yeah. I think those are great points. And I think you can also say to a client, a diagnosis is not a living, breathing thing. I say that to every client. It's something that can change over time. It probably will change. It's,
Yep.
it's a snapshot. It is a snapshot into who you are. And to quote Irv Yalom, would you want somebody diagnosing you in 2 hours, somebody as complex as you? But that's what we do. I tell clients all the time, I don't know if this is right. You know what? That sounds a lot better than saying this is definitive, because I don't know what you're going to be like in 2 weeks, 2 days, whatever, but this is the snapshot. And that's all it is. Sorry, insurance companies. It's just a snapshot.
It is. I think Dr. Yalom is amazing. I love his book. Um,
Yeah.
what is it? The Gift of
The gift
Therapy.
of therapy.
And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love that book. And I mean, I tell all my clients, if you come in here and you want a diagnosis, if that's like on the top of your priority list, I'm going to tell you right now, we're probably not going to be a good fit because
Right.
aside from like schizophrenia, I think all of the disorders in the DSM are bullshit. Um, there is nothing in the DSM that can't be explained by a dysregulated nervous system. Aside from maybe some
Hmm.
of the more psychotic ones, like schizophrenia, um, you know, sort of some of those more psychotic disorders. But I mean, what's depression? You're living in sympathetic slash dorsal-vagal, bottom of the ladder, Deb Dana information. What's anxiety? You're living in the middle of the ladder, sympathetic, fight or flight. What's trauma? What's PTSD? You're living in the middle of the ladder. You have a hard time getting to the ventral vagal state. I mean, on and on and on and on and on and so forth. It's a dysregulated nervous system. So, so for the most part,
Hmm.
the DSM is crap.
Okay, so I just took some notes for later
Of course, you did.
because this is going to be a great episode where we go because I don't disagree with some of what you're saying. I just think I'm going to add some different wrinkles into it. Because I'm going to throw in things like quality of life too, how you live your life. So this
Sure.
is I love that you brought up the nervous system stuff though. Um, I think about that sometimes when I sit with people. Do I really know what your nervous system is doing? Right? Do I know if your amygdala is all over the place? No, I sometimes I think I do. But this is why I like you. You just gave me the reason I'm glad you're part of the show because you're saying stuff nobody else will say, which you did at your presentation. Okay. Very few people even consider nervous system work. And I'm one of them, to be quite honest. I don't think about that nearly enough. Okay.
Sure.
I'll own that. But I want to discuss this more with you.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And
Yeah.
if we want to speak more specific to tonight's topic, which is neurodivergence, um, is that a dysregulated nervous system? Yeah, quite possibly.
Mm.
I mean, people who are truly neurodivergent, people who truly have cognitive uh, sort of difficulties and impairments, that's different. Um, but when
Right.
you are struggling with something that looks like ADHD, there could be many explanations to that. A dysregulated
Right.
nervous system being one, right? So things like schizophrenia, things like a TBI, things like learning processing disorders, language processing disorders, those are obviously in the DSM. Those are diagnoses with criteria that are different than a dysregulated nervous system, right? I mean, if your brain
Right.
doesn't
Right.
work
Right.
that way, that has little to do
Right.
with regulating your nervous system. So I want to be clear about that. But but until you have an actual evaluation, not a specific evaluation, but more of a neuropsychological holistic evaluation, don't be diagnosing yourself. And is it possible that there are other factors that might be contributing to your supposed neurodivergence?
Absolutely. Um, it goes back to us talking about going to the therapist and saying, "Here's what I want to be. Here's what I want to be." Okay.
Yeah,
Um, why do you want to be that? What is
right,
the benefit of these titles? That
right.
that's where I get stuck. Is titles to me mean very little anymore. Um, they're descriptors, right?
Yep,
So I think as we kind of come full circle with this conversation, we have softened people so much that the truth is now too painful to bear. There's something we can talk about because we're just talking about truth here. But if you weigh things down in enough layers of language and perception and all these different words, the truth gets lost. Okay. I am fine with saying to somebody, okay, I think you have autism. What's wrong with that? At least we understand it. When you say neurodivergent, that means nothing to me. It means nothing to me. because it's too big of a descriptor, right?
Right. Right.
So I think what this is going to do to the field, and it's already getting bad, you and I know that,
You know,
because now people are saying, well, I have an anxious attachment. People are now going off and describing their own attachment issues because they saw somebody talk about it.
sure.
This is the fear, is that, again, people don't have the information. They don't care about the information. They want a title that is empowering for all the wrong reasons.
Well, and I'm not saying that half the people, most of the people, but in general, it's also sometimes used as an excuse. um,
Absolutely.
for me to be late to work, or for me to, not effectively communicate with people, or for me to isolate in my room and play video games for, 12 hours a day. I mean,
Right,
sometimes,
right.
not always, but sometimes these things are being used to make excuses for the behaviors that we're doing and for us to not make
Yes,
changes in our lives. And now we're getting into this sort of, I mean, that's very cognitive behavioral therapy, right? The
it is.
CBT stuff. But but
Right, right, right.
but that is, I think, what makes myself sort of a well-rounded clinician, is that, yeah, my drawback is from, or my what I draw from is sort of polyvagal theory and somatosensory internal family systems. But you got to sprinkle in the CBT and DBT in there,
Right,
because there
right, right.
are positives from it. Um, and that's one of them, is when people are consciously making a choice not to do something, or consciously making a choice to make excuses, and then they find this cool new little word, that is sort of socially acceptable. And if you speak out against it, which, I mean, I'm not going to be surprised if we don't see some hate comments
Well, we
on our YouTube.
definitely will. Yeah.
But it's not to be offensive. It's to say, okay, if you truly have it, what can you do about it? And if you haven't been diagnosed with it, don't self-diagnose. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying anything else about it.
No, no, and I want to follow it up with we both have compassion for people. Look, it's not fun to have autism. It really isn't, because
Right.
number one, you don't connect in a quote unquote regular way. Just in general, you don't. You get stuck in certain repetitive ways of being, okay? And I'm being very general here. Um, if you truly have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, it's not fun to walk around dysregulated all the time, lose your stuff, not know how to, calm down. So we have a lot of compassion for people that have I have a lot of compassion for somebody with BPD or schizophrenia. These aren't fun things to live with. The problem I have, and I think you have, is
Yep.
how we describe. It's how we describe these things, because we're making it too soft and accessible. Okay. That needs to change. It needs to change.
Yeah, how we describe it and what we're doing with it. How
And
we
what we're
use
doing with it, exactly.
it to our advantage, or try to use it to an advantage, which doesn't do um, the people that are really suffering from some of these problems. It doesn't do them any justice. It's not fair to them, um,
Correct.
when we sort of make this phrase, because it will sort of become numb to the population, where it's like, oh, okay, I'm so sick of hearing that word. Just like people are sick of hearing self-care. People are sick of hearing, you know,
Yeah.
trauma. I mean,
Yep.
people are so sick of that because it's
Yep.
been said so much. People are going to get, and I think people are already getting sick of this neurodivergent. I
Uh,
mean, particularly, you know, sort of the older generation, Gen Xers and baby boomers. A lot of them hear neurodivergent and they go, "What?" I mean, they don't take
yeah,
it
what the
serious.
hell does it even mean? Right.
Yeah, yeah,
But this generation again is going to argue somehow I need that. Somehow it's helpful. And I think I can solve this problem tonight. Let me give you my solution, okay? I'm going to really get vulnerable here and say, if we just cared about people and made everybody feel included anyway, none of this would be necessary, Justin. If we made people feel included, here's
yeah.
something we know: when you brain map somebody, inclusion's a big deal.
Sure.
Um, I believe love and rejection light up in the brain more powerfully than anything else. Okay. Uh, I'll have to cite the resource. I know you will, but just think about that for a second. Rejection's a powerful thing. Okay,
Yes.
but that's what we're talking about here. If we
Yeah,
didn't reject people so regularly, none of this would be necessary. That's my theory.
yeah, yeah, and um, and group people, right? Um, there's the group for the ADHD people. There's a group for the ASD people. There's a group for the really successful people. There's a group for the minorities. There's et cetera, et cetera, et
Yep,
cetera, on and on and on.
yep,
Yeah,
yep,
I
yep,
think
yep,
we,
yep.
and I think that goes to a deeper conversation too, which is just as much as we, I had to listen to, I'll be careful how I say this, but there's a person
Yeah.
that I interacted with uh, in a scholarly sort of capacity recently, um, who kept saying, that their practices, um, what does she say? Inclusivity. What is the saying?
I think it's
Diversity,
it's
inclusion.
hard to say. Inclusivity, I think.
Yeah, but essentially saying we're
Yeah.
trying to make everybody, it's inclusive, it's all inclusive and diversity. Um, i- but I think the more we try to be diverse, the more we try to be all inclusive, I think we're actually doing quite the opposite. I don't think that particularly this country has done a good job of being all inclusive. I think that
I
while
agree.
we're trying to be all inclusive, we're actually leaving out a lot of people.
I totally agree. So it's a paradoxical effect, and that's such a good point because trying to solve a problem technically when no technical solution is necessary is probably not the right way to go. And if you haven't noticed this in our country, we keep adding layers of complexity to things that really are very simple. Uh, the argument when we do the AI episode next week is if you want to cure loneliness, go sit with a homeless person. Go sit with somebody and talk to them face to face.
Which brings up a question, and maybe I'll leave you with this question. You don't got to answer it tonight. Maybe we can use it
Yeah,
next week. But um,
I would love that.
I saw somebody post on one of my mental health providers groups that I'm in and on social media, and they said, um, "Has anybody else noticed that um, telehealth actually makes things worse for our clients? Is anybody else
Mhm.
noticing in their group practice?" And boy, did that person get lit up by people who are like, "Oh, my practice is 100% telehealth, and I have a thriving business, and I think my clients are thriving, and I would say most of my
Right,
clients have made progress." On and on and on.
right.
All these people started commenting, um, but I think there's some validity to that. I think that therapy via telehealth doesn't work for me. It maybe for some people it does, but it doesn't work for me because there's a different feeling, Eric, having this conversation. It's why I've said in the last episode and probably the first one that we need to find some time to do an in-person podcast episode, right? Because it's not the same.
Right,
It isn't the
right,
same.
right,
Um,
right.
we don't have to agree on whether it creates more loneliness or that, but I think everybody can agree on the fact that it's not the same. Being in person versus telehealth
Yeah,
on the computer,
yeah,
not the same. Um, but
absolutely.
I will say that I do think that AI and telehealth has bridged one of the gaps for people to feel a sense of belonging and connection, no pun intended, um, and not feel lonely. So I do think there are benefits to that.
Okay, yeah, I won't argue that tonight, but I will argue it next time, just
Yeah.
because I want to. But let me say this because I always like to contradict myself. Good God, everything probably has a value if you break it down enough. It's just in a collective sense, does something do more harm than good? And I can quote all the research in the world that social media has harmed us. Check out Coddling the American Mind. Everybody out there, read this book. To me, this is a must read for parents. Okay. Because we have softened people. We have softened people. So I just want to throw that out there. Um, and yeah, I will argue the case that, again,
What,
anything has merit, but we tend to
what
take
is
things so far.
what does that even mean? Hold on, hold on, hold on. I know
Yeah.
we're sort of running out of time here, but we have softened people. I want you to clarify what that means. Or at least what do you mean when you say that?
Yeah. Okay. So back in the day, so let me take it
Oh,
back to when I'm
you
18.
know it's gonna
You
be you know it's gonna be a typical Gen Xer response when you hear the phrase "back in the day."
no. Okay. All right. Let me use it. Back in 1994, um,
I was 3.
you could say something to somebody kind of snarky, kind of passive aggressively, and no one cared. Okay. My point today is if you said that same shit to a kid, you would be at a school board meeting, probably. Um, but let me further my point and use Haidt's book to describe what I'm going to say. Okay. These students are so soft that they're threatened by a speaker coming that they don't want on campus. Okay. Because they're equating discomfort with actual danger. I think that's a powerful thing. Discomfort with danger. There is no
Hmm.
danger in having somebody come to speak that you don't agree with. That's not dangerous. But if you bitch about it long enough, it becomes collectively dangerous. So that's my case when I say people are soft.
I lit a fire under you on that one. I like it. I'm really sick of though. I'm really sick of hearing that word, or even that phrase. Like it makes people soft. I'll be honest with you. I can't stand it. Um,
Okay.
Back in the day, right, when I hear
Yeah.
that, it's like, okay, sure, things were like that. But I think my argument to that is, but just because it was like that, does that make it okay? And how do we know that it didn't have an effect on people back then, right? Just because that's the way it was, and just because you could make a comment and allegedly nobody was offended by it, how do we know that,
Mm.
right? So that's sort of my argument against that is I don't know that there's I don't know I see you're trying to draw a correlation, and as many conversations and debates I've had about this, I don't see the correlation of yeah it was like this and it was okay. I don't really buy that.
Well, okay. And we would have to define what okay means. But let me throw this. Okay, I'm not going to say back in the day anymore, and I'm not even going to use the word soft anymore. I'm going to use a totally new word, which is susceptible.
Oh,
Okay?
whoa, I see what you just did there. Now you're proving your point. See, I bitched about it long enough. So now you're changing it just for me because you don't want to offend me. I see what you did there. Man,
No, 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 no,
folks,
no. I'm not trying to not offend you. I'm trying to give you a word that you could say, okay, I at least, I get it. I don't give a crap if you like my word or not. Um, here's something that I think is almost inarguable, though. This is without a doubt the laziest generation we've ever known.
I don't agree with you at all on that. I don't.
It is the most entitled. It is the most me based generation we've ever known.
No, it's not. It's a
It
generation.
is.
It's a generation that asks questions and who doesn't just conform and go, "Oh, I, I'm a peasant. Okay, I should just shut up and do as I'm told. No questions asked." I think that entitlement is confused for pushing back on the whole idea of I said do this, so just do it. Um, I think that's being confused with entitlement.
Okay. Then let me go back to those college kids that argued to not have the speaker come and the dean, caved in. They didn't
By the
ask
way,
questions. They just said, we don't want this person here. They didn't ask questions.
By the way, folks, we've totally diverted from neurodivergence to a a
And I think this is on you tonight because you said we're winding down, and then you had to do this.
and then of course I just wanted to make sure that everybody tonight was able to see firsthand gaslighting 101, what it could look like,
Yes.
what it does look like, and I think we've given that
Yes.
perfect example. Um, no, I think that this can go into many other things, but I really do disagree with you on all of that. I
Yeah.
do think
And
that this
and
generation, my generation, millennials, the generation below me, um, Gen Z or whatever they are, um,
yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I do think that there are significant differences, but I do think that one of the things is entitlement. I think gets a little bit confused with what I just said, and also um, I think the laziness gets confused for mm, I am worth more than what you're paying me or what you're asking me to do. So if you're not going to give me this, then I'm out. Deuces. Peace. Bye. I'm not sure what Gen Z says. I'm sure it's not deuces, but I think they
Yeah.
say you're bugging right now, Eric. You're bugging. You're acting real mid right now. Um, and then they're out, and then we see that as
Yeah.
ooh, that's an entitled little brat. That's a lazy worker right there. No, it's not.
Okay. So here's the difference. Look, I am looking at your point of view. You know what? I'm rerouting my brain to say he's got some good points here. Are you doing the same thing with me?
No. Nope. Nope, I'm
Okay.
not.
Okay.
I'll be honest.
You're
Let me
not.
let me say this. I'm on. It's difficult for me because I've just heard it so much, and
So what?
things are just very, very different than they were in the '90s. Even when I was born, I mean, I'm a '91 baby, but even in the '90s, the '80s, definitely the '70s and '60s, things are just so different, and it's really difficult for me to go back to the past when it's sort of irrelevant because we're in August of 2023.
On some level, no, I'm coughing and dying over here. We sort of have to compare trends. We have to look at what's happening. I mean, we do it in mental health, and again, I'm going to try to do what you're not doing, which is see your point of view because you've heard it too many times. So I guess that impairs you from seeing my point of view. I'm still
Well,
going to see your point of view.
it makes me
And
neurodivergent. Okay, my brain is not working the way you want it to. So
this is actually so. Let me say to you when I dreamed of what the show was going to be, this is it. I'm living it with you right now because we're going to walk away and there will be not one bit of ill will between us. Um, and I like that. I like that. I love that you can say, I disagree with you. Good. You should. You should. And I want to be fair too. There are lots of millennials and Gen Zers that are freaking outstanding. They're awesome. I mean, some of my favorite clients. So I'm probably stereotyping a little bit. Okay. Leave me a comment. Tell me I'm an idiot. Okay. I'll accept that too. Um, because there's always exceptions. But the part that I will argue with you to the death is entitlement. And maybe that needs to be its own separate show. You can shake your head all you want.
that's gonna have to be a separate show because I'm telling you right now, you're confusing
Yep.
the word entitlement for everything else that I explained, for knowing your self worth, for saying I'm not gonna do that and drawing the limits, for saying this whole 40-hour work week thing is crap. The idea that I have to work from 18 until 65 just to maybe live my life for 5 to 10 years, BS. This idea that I have to have a job to be a productive member of society is BS. I I will fight you on that one to the death as well.
Okay.
I think that people are realizing that and they're saying no, thank you. Life is more than that, and I think that that gets confused for entitlement sometimes.
Well, and I'll disagree with that and say that what it does is it robs you of purpose because I don't care if you wash dishes or landscape for a living. There is purpose in doing something. Okay.
Sure.
And, and, and sorry, I don't find purpose in proactively not doing something. Maybe we need to argue that too. But
My purpose in not doing anything is to live my life because it's my life, and that gives me purpose. Um,
but do you see how that comes across as I have nothing left to learn then? I really don't need to draw into these different wells of information. You see how it comes across like that, right?
I mean, I think you're taking my words out of context. I I think that I can learn, but on my own terms. And I think I can say, sure, I want to learn more, but not right now. Why should I have to? I don't want to do the things that society has sort of said this is the way it is and the way it should be. I want to do it the way I want to do it. And does that sound entitled? Maybe, uh, maybe to some people, but I also think that that's just it's my life. Do you pay my bills? Do you pay for all my stuff? Do you? No, you don't. So I get to say what I want to do with my life, and I think people have a problem with that. Um, and if that makes me
Um,
entitled, sign me up. We talked about labels very on. We started the show talking about neurodivergent. Everybody wants to have a label, but for like the last 10 minutes now, we've been throwing out labels: Gen Z, Baby Boomers, Xers, entitled. We've been throwing them out left and right. So I guess what we learned from this episode tonight is we're just as
yeah,
big a
yeah,
hypocrites as the hypocrites we were trying to call out at the
we
beginning.
are. Oh, I'm living it. You know what? I'll admit to that. But you know why we're doing it though? This all comes out of defensive brain though. This is not us trying to promote information. We're just like we both want to be right because that's what the brain defaults to is I'm going to show you why. And I'll say this because you're not going to. I could be wrong about all this. Okay, I could be. You know what? If that's the case, then teach me.
Well, I'm glad you said that because my brain was thinking quite the opposite. I was actually going to make the survey comment that I know I'm right. Eric just thinks he has a possible chance of being right. Um,
Oh,
that's so.
wow.
I'm glad you were a little bit more humble. So, all right, I think we got to end it there. I want to leave people, at least for myself. Uh, we started talking the show about neurodivergence. What does that mean? And really, if you've stuck in there this long with us to this podcast, um, you could tell all your friends, fast forward all of it, listen to the last 5 minutes of what Eric and Justin said. But if you think you're struggling with something, whether it's ADHD symptoms or ASD or whatever, go get a neuropsychological evaluation. Go get an evaluation that is all encompassing, that will look at your
Mhm.
cognitive abilities, your personality, your mental health, all of it. So you can have, I think, even those people that don't think they are sort of neurodivergent, I think everybody should have a neuropsych because it tells us a lot of stuff about the way our brain works. And I think that's good for everybody to know and understand.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And I
so
do. Yeah.
stop with the stupid like things that you can click on social media. Stop with the random ass Google searches for this, that, or the other thing. Stop going to Wikipedia. Stop going to WebMD. Go
Right.
find a professional who
Right.
does these evals and get a better understanding that way.
And the word I'm going to use is surrender to what you don't know. Surrender to it. It's okay. It's okay. This has been fantastic, and I agree. People can fast forward in certain spots here, but I'm going to watch this and rewind and have a great time. It was really a pleasure to do this with you, and this really I was dragging tonight. I had a bad day. I told you the Mustang story about having to get my back plate fixed. Um, I've realized something about myself tonight, and I'm really proud of this. I don't care if you disagree with me. I love talking about this, and I love talking to you. And so my love of that impedes anything you're going to say to me. And that's pretty powerful. Okay.
Yeah.
So I will also encourage listeners to have these conversations with people. Purposely have a conversation with somebody that does not agree with you. Stay in your frontal lobe, right? Stay in the part of your brain that listens and absorbs. Because this is priceless. These kinds of conversations to me are priceless. And it was just a really good time tonight, Justin. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate everything you just said, Eric, and likewise, um, uh,
Yeah,
for you, and everything I say, is not intended to be sort of offensive or anything like that. And if it's offensive, you'll get over it. We'll talk about it, and it'll be
of
okay.
course.
I,
Yeah,
I do
right.
have one quick question before we go. I'm curious. Do you fall into the Gen Xer category?
I think so because I was born in 76 and I
Yeah,
think it goes from like 69. I keep hearing different stuff, but whatever the generation is after the baby boomers, that's what I am.
yeah. You're a Gen Xer.
Gen Xer. Okay. Yeah.
Well, that explains a lot.
I'm the generation. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, it explains a lot, and I think, and if you're still listening, that will give us some insight to how next week's conversation on the dark side therapy is going to go when we talk about AI and technology.
Woo! It's gonna be awesome. All right, for you people out there, like, subscribe, comment, for goodness sake, tell us what you think. And again, for those daring enough, we'll have you on the show. We have no problem with that. But thank you for listening. As always, it's great. We'll see you next time on the dark side.